Okay, here we're going to do the 8.2 notes. We start out with some vocabulary. So a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both pairs of opposite sides parallel. Okay, that's what makes it a parallelogram. Okay, then there are other theorems about parallelograms, and the theorem 8.7 tells us that if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its opposite sides are congruent. Okay, so once you know it's a parallelogram, you now know the opposite sides are congruent. Okay, if you have a parallelogram, another thing happens. Your opposite angles are going to be congruent. Okay, so the opposite angles are congruent when you have a parallelogram. Okay, also note this detail about parallelogram and their other angles. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its consecutive angles, the angles that are in a row, are supplementary. Which means that they sum to 180 degrees. Okay, so then parallelogram, theorem 8.9, a parallelogram, if it has one pair of sides that are parallel and congruent. So you know that it's a parallelogram if you have this situation, since this got cut off a little bit. If I tell you that this is congruent and these are parallel, it must be a parallelogram. Okay, let's go on to the next page. You know you have a parallelogram if you have, this is just what I just did. So what I just said here was correct because it had cut off on the other page. Okay, 8.10 says something about the diagonals in a parallelogram. So if you have a parallelogram, then you know the diagonals have to be bisected. So that one was bisected and that one was bisected. Okay, note that you do not have to have QS does not have to equal PR. Okay, that's not the requirement. All you have to know it's a parallelogram is that those diagonals, whatever length they may be, have been bisected. Okay, here's an example that we can use to apply these properties. So find the values of x and y. So they're telling me it's a parallelogram because I see I have parallel sides. Okay, so then everything else falls into place. The opposite angles will be congruent, therefore y has to equal 65, and the opposite sides will be congruent. Therefore, x plus 4 has to equal 12, and thereby x equals 8. Okay, so you should be able to go ahead and do the homework, use these theorems to explain your reasoning.